PowerPoint presentation as part of your training, is that correct?
We would have received PowerPoints on all subjects within our training.
Was there a particular PowerPoint referring to those sensitive areas that as we defined that term?
I don't recall exact PowerPoints, sir.
Was there a title to any of the PowerPoints that you recall?
No, sir.
Is there a problem? Sorry?
I was trying to avoid my bracelet hitting this.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
No problem. I didn't know if there was some other issue.
No.
Okay. Is there was any of the training that you received particular to the amount of force that should be used in sensitive areas?
The training that would refer to the pressure we received training on would be practicing amongst ourselves and with our instructors to search for objects that would be hidden so that we can tell the difference from body to body type of different types of passengers. So that way when we interact with various types of passengers, we can use different forms of pressure based on what we're interacting with at that time.
What do you mean by various types of passengers?
Every passenger is different based on what they're wearing. It's predominantly, that's the main factor for us, is how thick that clothing is, to then make sure that we can tell the difference between the clothing and the skin and anything that might be in between.
So how would you change your pat-down procedures based upon the factors you just mentioned?
You would need more pressure to feel the difference between a thicker piece of clothing than the skin, than, say, thin pieces of clothing and the skin.
How in your training, was the term excessive force ever defined?
I don't recall.
Was the term excessive force ever used?
I don't recall.
Were there any measuring procedures to show foot-pounds per inch or any other measurement procedure that you ever were instructed on?
Not to my knowledge.
Were there ever any, some people might call them crash test dummies, but medical dummies or some type of anatomical representation that would be able to measure the amount of force that you were using?
No.
How were you able to discern in your training that you were not using excessive force?
By practicing person to person with my understanding. Well, first, may I ask, can you define excessive force for me?
Can you define excessive force for me?
Excessive force would be anything beyond what a reasonable officer would use under the same training, education, and experience.
Can you be more specific? Can you read back the defendant's answer, please?
Excessive force would be anything beyond what a reasonable officer would use under the same training and education and experience.
Can you be more specific in your answer as to how that is a measurable quantity?
Use of force has no set definition for every circumstance possible. The Supreme Court ruled that in Graham v. Connor, and so my training is based on use of force being under a reasonable officer's perspective. Reasonable officers, again, going to change person to person and based on their education they've received, the training they've received, and the experience that they've had.
Did you have any experience with excessive force in your training?
In my training, I did not.
Was excessive force discussed in your training?
No, not that I know of.
How will you know excessive force in your role at TSO if it was not discussed in your training?
Under the understanding of a reasonable officer, as long as you act professionally, do what you need to, understanding that, you know, you're hired to be professional. You're not hired to be rude to anybody. You're not hired to be unprofessional in any capacity.
Have you ever made a mistake in your pat-downs?
Yes.
What mistakes have you made?
In training, I've missed objects while training to feel differences between the clothing and the skin.
Can you describe the objects that you have missed?
Prohibited weapons, cell batteries, flat cell batteries.
Where were those objects located?
I don't recall exact areas for each.
Were they located in the sensitive areas as we previously defined it being the thighs, groins, and genitalia?
I don't recall.
Do you think it's likely that they were located in one of those three areas?
I can't speculate on either.
Would you have been additionally vigilant in inspecting sensitive areas as we defined to be thighs, groins, and genitalia, in looking, because of you having missed objects previously?
Are you talking on March 10th? Or are you
I'm only
in
talking
June?
on March 10th. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not.
We're still
Mr.
talking
Silvertooth
training.
is smiling, and yeah, I'm not talking in the history of the world. I'm talking March 10th.
On March 10th, I wouldn't have varied one way or the other. At that point, I was confident in my searching abilities.
When did you become confident in your searching abilities?
During OJT,
When did that occur?
following my 4 weeks of classroom work.
So would that have been sometime in around October of 2015?
Closer probably to November, December timeframe, sir.
Okay. And this incident occurred in March, so this was in March of 2016, so this was at least 3 to 4 months after that, correct?
That is correct.
Actually closer to 5 months, right? Is that right? Closer to 5 months? Between when you had your OJT completion and this incident?
If we're speculating that it was around November, December timeframe, then 4 to 5 months is what I would time
Okay,
that.
okay. So you had plenty of time to become confident in your skills, as you put it.
Yes.
How would you have, so you've already stated that excessive force was not defined by the TSA, correct?
I don't recall it being defined.
And how would you know, and you said that you have made mistakes, correct?
On pat-downs?
On pat-downs, right?
On pat-downs, I have made mistakes.
So how would you know that none of your mistakes were related to excessive force?
The mistakes I've made for not finding the prohibited items would be based on me not providing enough pressure.
So you have been, as part of your experience, you've learned to use more pressure, correct?
I've learned to vary my pressure
How do you vary your pressure?
based on what I can feel between the skin and the clothing.
Is the pressure consistent all the way through your pat-down?
It can't be. It has to be varied
How does it vary?
so that I can tell the difference. As I search the passenger, you cover different areas and the clothing either becomes bulkier, becomes thinner, everything is varying as you're doing even a single body part. So as you're doing a search, the pressure you apply is varied constantly.
Do you slide your hand in any of the three areas that were previously referenced, the thigh, groin, or genitalia? Do you slide your hand during the search of any of those three areas?
On the inner thigh, you do.
And when do you stop sliding your hand?
You slide all the way up until you meet resistance between the leg and the torso, and then you slide all the way down.
Would you agree that the resistance between the thigh and the torso would be the area defined as the groin and genitalia?
I would agree that would be within the genitalia region.
how much resistance do you impart before you stop sliding your hand?
I'm sorry, resistance.
How much resistance do you have to receive as feedback to your hand before you stop sliding?
As long as I can clear it as required by SOP, I would then slide down the rest of the leg.
How do you know that you are not using excessive force when you are, as you say, meeting resistance?
In my opinion, the force I would need is only enough to clear it as required by SOP.
But you said that excessive force has not been defined by TSA,
That is in my opinion.
in your opinion. So, how do you know that? Can you give a level of pressure that defines the resistance that you typically expect to enable you to stop sliding your hand?
Form.
How much pressure do you use on patting down the thighs, groins, and genitalia?
Enough to tell the difference between the clothing and the skin.
Is there a mathematical or scientific description of that pressure?
Not to my knowledge.
Have you ever asked that question to your supervisors or TSA?
I don't recall.
Have you ever been concerned that you might be using too much pressure?
I've never been concerned with using too much pressure.
Have you ever received any feedback from any passengers that you're using too much pressure?
I don't recall.
Do you believe that you could have received feedback from passengers that you were using too much pressure?
I believe it's possible to receive feedback on all aspects of a security checkpoint.
In your opinion, what would be a normal response to from a passenger who was receiving excessive force?
They would probably say, ow. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, they would give me an indication that they were hurt in some way.
During your pat down of the plaintiff, who was me, on 10 March 2016, how did I respond when you were patting me down and you encountered resistance, as you put it, when patting down my thighs, groins, and genitalia? How did I respond?
I had already met the resistance between your leg and torso. As I was coming down the rest of your leg is when I recall you jumping off the mat. And I remember you jumped off the mat and started yelling. I don't recall your words.
So you say that you're calling it jumping off the mat. You say that I jumped off the mat is your term?
Yes, can you read back what I said?
I had already met resistance between the leg and torso as I was coming down the rest of the leg is when I recall you jumping off the mat. And I remember you jumped off the mat and started yelling. I don't recall your words.
Thank you. Did I provide any feedback about potential excessive force when your hand was up at my groin, genitals, and thigh area?
Not that I recall.
How many others were in your class in your training class at TSO?
I don't recall exact numbers. I don't recall exact numbers.
Do you think it was more than 20?
No.
Do you think can you give a range of numbers of your opinion and best recollection?
In my best recollection, I would say there were more than 10 and less than 20 of us.
Okay. Do you keep in contact with any of them?
No, I have social media with them where I see updates, but I don't speak to them on a regular basis. What social media do you have? I have Facebook and Tumblr and I don't go on social media a whole lot. To my knowledge, I would list those right now.
Okay. Are you in touch with any of your previous students from training on any of the social media accounts that you listed?
I didn't have these.
Do you have, can you specify what part phone?
Students, are you referring to individuals whom he trained or
No.
individuals he's with?
I'm referring to the students who were in the class who received TSO training with Mr. Polson.
Okay.
Have you ever been in contact with any of those fellow students on social media?
Yes.
Have you ever discussed any aspects of pat-down procedures with any of those students on social media or anywhere else?
I have not.
You have not. Let's see. Do you know the contact info for where you took your training?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Do you know the contact info for where you took your training?
I don't remember the exact address. I know that it was on Dulles Airport property. TSA has a building there that we do classroom work in.
Okay.
Captain Linlor, when there is a moment, can we take a 5-minute break? Or 3-minute break? I just need to use this one.
Do you want to take a break now also, Mr. Polson?
I can take a break now.
Okay. Sure, we can take a 5-minute break now and resume. And so we'll resume at 5 minutes after. Do you want to stop the videotape or keep it rolling?
I'll stop the tape off record. Going off record at 9:49. Back on the record at 9:57.
Mr. Polson, you stated previously that the interactions between you and I began on what you referred to as the dirty side of the checkpoint area. Is that correct?
You were still on the dirty side, I would agree.
Okay. And you believe that there was likely video recordings of that?
I can't speculate. I'm not sure what cameras cover what.
But in your opinion, the camera should cover that area also?
In my opinion, cameras should cover every aspect of a security checkpoint.
Okay. Do you know of any, were you ever asked to retain the videos of this incident?
I personally, I believe my legal counsel was asked. I don't remember asking for any video myself.
Did I, as the plaintiff, ever ask in your presence for the videos to be retained?
I don't recall.
If I had asked as an opinion, would you have retained them?
Phone.
In such as?
He's here in his personal capacity and his individual knowledge in regards to what happened between you and him, not to give opinion testimony.
Actually, opinion is covered, counsel. Do you believe it is your opinion to retain evidence of an alleged crime?
Phone.
I would agree.
Did you take any steps to retain evidence of an alleged crime on 10 March 2016?
On that day, I did not.
Let me rephrase the question. I wasn't trying to ask if you necessarily took the steps on that day. Did you take any action to retain evidence of an event that occurred on 10 March 2016?
It is my understanding that my counsel has reached out to TSA to acquire a video. I don't know what it covers or what video was received.
Why do you hold that opinion?
Because
I just want to caution you not to discuss the conversations that you've had with attorneys that represent you.
Can you ask your question again, please?
Can you please read back the question?
Why do you hold that opinion?
I don't know. I don't have. It would seem reasonable.
Is what you're saying that it would seem reasonable for the attorney to request to retain video evidence?
I would say it's reasonable to expect after a court case becomes of an incident that, especially with a federal agency involved, in my opinion, they would probably take steps to keep such video.
When you say a court case becomes of an incident, those were your words just now, correct?
Can you please repeat my exact words?
I would say it is reasonable to expect after a court case becomes of an incident that, especially with the federal agency involved, in my opinion, they would possibly take steps to keep such video.
So my question was, your exact words, which were included in that statement, were when a court case becomes of an incident. Is that correct?
When a court case comes out of an incident.
Okay. Do you believe do you have any obligation to retain evidence prior to the filing of a court case?
I'm not aware.
Do you believe that a prudent person would want to retain evidence, video evidence of an alleged crime?
Form.
Is it your opinion, Mr. Polson, that video evidence can help to clarify whether or not a crime occurred?
In my opinion, video can provide one point of view for any incident.
What can it not provide?
The whole picture.
How do you define that?
Every story has more than one point of view. Cameras can only give you one point of view.
How many videos were saved in this of this incident?
Form.
I'm not aware.
For the record, let me state that I, as plaintiff, received one video from TSA in this incident. Would you, Mr. Polson, would you want to have all the videos saved?
Form.
All the videos of this incident in question, from what point of view?
To be able to show, you say there are many sides to a story, correct?
I would agree.
Would you want to have all the videos saved to show those many sides?
In my opinion, video would still not provide all sides.
What would be missing?
All sorts of contrasts can be involved. The video could be black and white, it could be color video. That could tell you what kind of day it is. You could involve the weather to tell a point of view. There's so many types of points of view for a story, sir. I believe video itself is not all it takes.
Would the quality of the video make a difference?
It can, I believe.
How could the video, can you think of ways in your opinion that the video might be represented to, or might be changed so that it doesn't fully represent?
Form.
I don't understand the question.
Are you familiar with the term frame rate?
I'm not.
Have you ever seen a movie?
I have.
Do you know that there's a frame rate used in movies?
Form.
I'm not aware of the phrase.
Frame rate?
Correct.
Frame rate is the number of frames per second that are used in a movie.
Okay.
Based on that definition, video security cameras also have a frame rate if they are video. Do you have any knowledge of frame rates of videos used at the security checkpoint at Dallas on March 10th,
Form.
2016?
I'm not aware.
If frame rate, let's get this here. Since frame rate is used in videos, then would you agree that a still picture, which does not have a frame rate, is less representative than a video?
Form.
I would not agree. No, I would not agree.
Do you believe that a single picture can show as much information as a video?
Form.
I do.
Could a still picture, in your opinion, demonstrate excessive force?
Form.
I believe certain aspects can be represented by a still picture.
You said before, and I'm trying just to paraphrase you, that one of the ways someone might respond to excessive force is by saying, ouch. Are there any other indications someone, in your opinion, might use to demonstrate excessive force during a search?
There are.
What would those be?
Vulgar language.
Anything else?
Hand gestures.
What type of hand gestures?
Could be using the middle finger.
Do you think it would be reasonable to